If you're looking for exclusive content, please don't look any further than joining the Trap Talk Patreon family. Some of the best reptile keepers in this industry are part of the Trap Talk Patreon family. As soon as you join the Patreon family, you connect to a Discord. You can also tap into an Instagram group chat, connect with some of the most diverse keepers we have in the reptile hobby today. Shout out to my Patreon members and be ready for Trap Fest 2026. It's going to be one of the biggest events yet. Find all information again in the very first link in the description below. And again, thank you so much to all my fellow Patreon members out there. Cheers.
T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0.
Trap Talk Reptile Network, coolest reptile network in the world. Episode 751, the round 2. Dr. Tillis coming at you right now. I'm excited. But yes, guys, happy Thursday. I'm your boy MJ. Welcome to another episode of Trap Talk. This is your first time listening. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell in that order, and then select all. You'll be reminded every episode released out of the network 7 days a week. The only network giving you a new episode Monday through Sunday. Got a special co-host in the building. You might know him from the Expert and the Idiots podcast. Adam, what is up, buddy?
What's up, man? How's it going?
Happy you're here tonight, bud.
Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Are you shocked?
Shocked about what?
Exactly. No, man. Listen, at the end of the day, I told you how much your episode with Dr. Tillis inspired me, and then I got to bring him on, and definitely wasn't enough. 2 hours is not enough with Dr. Tillis.
Yeah.
And I knew the round 2 was coming, and I was like, you know what? Why not have Adam, be a part of this? And then I have a special guest with Dr. Tillis, Patrick Holmes. Do you know about Patrick?
Oh yeah, I know about Patrick.
He's a special guy right there.
Absolutely. I got to get him on my podcast, man.
I thought about that not too long ago. I think as I was scheduling and getting all this together, I'm like, has Patrick been on Adam's show? And
not yet. Put in a good word for me. All right.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah. Done.
Yeah.
What's crazy, you've had a lot of people on and you haven't had Patrick on. So
I know.
That means that's good for your channel, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's still people out there.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And as you know, for me, I could feel like there's gonna be multiple rounds with Dr. Tillis. I think we talked about this on your show, like how we can't get enough of some guest off one episode, which makes what we do awesome, because we could always bring them back. So
for sure. And Dr. Tillis is one of those guys.
Oh, for sure, man. So I'm excited for tonight. But how you been, man? Let's just kind of get to see how you're doing. And were you just getting done being sick or something? I think we talked about.
Dude, I was so sick, dude. And my mic died the weekend before that. So I haven't been recording. It's been 2 weekends of not recording. So yeah, this is weird. Being behind the mic is weird right now. Yeah.
What happened to your mic?
It just died. It died. And I called Rode customer service, and they helped me troubleshoot it. And they're like, yeah, I think he said a bulb or something like that was blown, or I have no idea.
Interesting. So yeah, did you have to get a new mic, or were they able to fix it?
I bought a new one, and that one's going in on warranty, and then I'll have some redundancy, if I have another failure.
Well, that's good. I mean, shout out to Rode for taking care of you on that.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, otherwise, I've been kind of just I got real bad stomach bug, which kind of made me sit there and wonder, could this have been from my animals? And I kind of want to ask Tillis about that,
Getting sick because your animals got you sick?
Well, yeah, does that happen? We all kind of repeat the talking point of no, you can't get sick from your snakes. There's no salmonella from snakes, but I mean, is it realistic to always say no, that's not possible, you know?
Well, my buddy Mark Bailey, like when I first had Leo, my first kid, he told me like, dude, be very careful. Like when it comes to you dealing with the rats and then you go into your kids, like he just told me like, dude, make sure you're extra clean. And I was like, that's a good point, you know, because rats are nasty, and I'm already kind of extra clean on that. But, you know, sometimes I'm getting called into the house while I'm in the middle of my rodent chore.
Yep.
So like, I'm like just having the dust on me. I'm like, I don't even like to touch the kids. Like I like to shower, get that done. So if that's the case with the rats, I don't see how maybe the snakes can't potentially give us something that we could pass on or something. I don't know. That's going to be a good topic because I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I'm curious. Salmonella, is it real?
Is it
You
real?
know?
I mean, it's definitely real. Yeah. Okay. You want to know what I've been doing lately? And my wife found out. She's like, "What the fuck you doing?" I'm like, "No, hell no, dude. People do this." And then I told my other friends, and they're like, "No, you're tripping." I've been putting raw eggs in my protein shake. And they apparently are like, dude, you're gonna die. I'm like, come on.
No,
dude.
it's totally sterile inside the egg.
That's what I thought.
It's the outside is dirty. Yeah, put those eggs in there, bro. I want to see if you get sick.
Dude, what's great. The only reason why it freaks me out because I've had food poisoning before, and it's the worst. Like food poisoning is the absolute worst thing somebody could go through.
Yeah,
have you had
so bad? Oh yeah, dude. I had a bison burger once, and the reason why I know it was that was because all the other dudes that I ordered bison burgers with, we all ordered them the same.
Yeah,
all got sick. We were all puking the next day. Yeah,
that's fucking gnarly, dude. All right, well, we definitely have our topics lined up for Dr. Tillis tonight.
Yeah, illness.
All right, man. Before we get to it, guys, just a reminder, Trap Talk 7 days a week, all right? You can listen to all these episodes on all major audio platforms. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, you could go at it, man. Go listen to some of the beginning episodes. Catch on up. Nothing but bangers. Appreciate wherever you listen to any of these episodes. Really means a lot. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, ZooMed. Just under 50 years, biggest brand in the reptile industry. Make sure you get your next reptile product at ZooMed. Find out all the latest ZooMed products in description below. My favorite being the Slither Sense. Got about 7 of them in all different enclosures, all working perfectly. So I'm a huge fan. And thank you so much, ZooMed, for everything you do in this hobby. So check them out. Again, ZooMed, go to their website. Also follow them on Instagram. Find all the links in the description below. Also, tonight's episode is brought to you by Brian Susan over at Sundown Reptiles. If you're looking for a tree monitor, a Bronia, Kahuas, really rare looking geckos, this is your guy right here. Sundown Reptiles. Check them out on Instagram. You can also find them at Daytona, Bob Fu Show. You can see him at NARBC, Tinley, all the big shows, man. So appreciate you so much, Brian Susan over at Sundown Reptiles. Also, tonight's episode is brought to you by MORPH Market and MORPH Market Shipping. Get your next reptile at MORPH Market, and also go through MORPH Market Shipping to save yourself a good amount of coin, okay? I've saved myself thousands. As a hobby, MORPH Market has saved over $3 million in shipping, okay? That is just crazy, and the savings have not stopped. You could also go to shipping supplies on MORPH Market, save money on shipping boxes. So they're helping us out a lot, man. So thank you so much, Darian, Zach, Brittany, and Tracy, the entire MORPH Market crew doing amazing things. And again, thank you so much, MORPH Market, for everything you do. And then last but not least, shout out to Focus Cube Habitats, #1 PVC design enclosures in the game. Everything you see behind me are 3x2x2 PVC design enclosures. You can also go to focuscubehabitats.com and select from 30 different enclosures, okay? So thank you so much, Stephen and Ashley. Appreciate everything you do. Focuscubehabitats.com again, and also check them out on Instagram and YouTube. Adam, I'm ready to rock and roll. I don't want to hold Dr. Tillis too much longer. Are you ready for this round 2 or what?
Let's do it.
Patrick's going to be a little late because he's dropping off snakes across the street at FedEx. Okay, so go figure. But guys, you are in for a treat. This is episode 751. Do what you got to do to get your mind right, and do what you got to do to stay hydrated. This is the round 2. Dr. Tillis, the Nido Virus Chronicles. Get scared. You should be scared. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to have a good time. See the top. Let's go. Choo!
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes,
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, gotta love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club
All right, we're live. Episode 751. Welcome back, Dr. Tillis.
Thank you very much for having me again. I really appreciate both of you being here. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Hey,
Yeah.
man, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you? How are your how's all your critters?
Everything is alive and well. Thank you to all of your testing.
Absolutely happy to do it.
Yeah, man. So how's it been, Dr. Tillis? I know it's only been a few months, but you know, as of right now, we're in the thick of spring, heading into April. What's it like in your neck of the woods right now, as far as your workload goes?
Oh, it's at a peak, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
Been making a lot of progress on stuff in the lab, a lot of new workflows, a lot of new technologies, and finally getting to the point where it's no longer theoretical and now being put into practice at scale. And so that's gonna really allow us to level up the game in terms of the type of really what the standard is for diagnostic testing for exotic animals. It's very cool.
Well, let me level up this podcast. Patrick Holmes, here he is. Better late than never. What's up, Pat?
I actually was on time, and then I realized that the notes that I took for this were still on my phone, which I'm using to do the podcast. So I had to unplug and write them down really quick. So
Awesome.
I just missed something. I heard that the last part of the sentence about upping the game for diagnostics. What was the first part of that?
Just implementing a lot of new technologies in our diagnostic lab and being able to take these ideas and put them out into our existing workflows without being
Awesome.
kind of theoretical.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I know you and Dr. Tillis have chatted a little bit before, Patrick, via message.
Just a couple messages, but nothing real substantial. I remember congratulating him on the Halmahera pythons.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, it's crazy how Patrick knows about anything that has relation to cool productions or anything in the reptile world. Patrick will find you and he'll come congratulate you, and then he's going to talk your ear off for sure.
But it could be pretty small circle in some regards too.
Yeah.
But like I was telling Dr. Tillis during sound check, Patrick, you have so much to bring to tonight's table, just with your involvement in the Green Tree Python game. Information wise, I don't see anyone bigger than you when it comes to like the knowledge that you put into the chondros. But Nido, man, what a funny topic, I guess you can say, right, Pat? Like I think I've asked you like can we like get to the bottom of Nido? Couple times you're like, there is no getting to the bottom of Nido, and can you elaborate on that with Dr. Tillis here when you say something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you say a funny topic, it's an extremely complicated topic, and it's a hot button thing, and has been for quite a while, which has some utility, but is also problematic. And just like those two things exist at the same time, you have the full spectrum of reactions to this topic, which go all the way from people way overreacting to people just not caring about it at all, and everything in between. And like most things that are complicated, there's a whole lot of truth that's like in the middle of it. Although with something, when you were talking about a disease, a communicable disease with our animals, I think it's maybe a little safer to lean towards overreaction than being complacent about it. But, there's a lot of things that can be said about this virus where you can really say, hey, this aspect of it is not something to freak out about, but there's not really any cases where I think it should be ignored, especially with the ones that we understand and can test for, and especially when it relates to species that seem to be susceptible to getting into the disease state, like green tree pythons.
Yeah. And then our last episode, Dr. Tillis, man, my inbox was full because you had people kind of shooken up a bit, Some people were thinking like, yeah, go. I just was like, some people thought testing, is it even worth testing after hearing what Dr. Tillis said? And then you have people who were doing extra testing after what you said. So what's your take? Go ahead.
I work in a veterinary diagnostic lab, so you will never hear a statement from me that says testing isn't important. Like, it really is. It's just a nuanced tool, and so it's a conversation to have. But I think Patrick is absolutely spot on with his summation of stuff, and there is no end to it because these being the pathogens and their hosts are two moving targets shooting at each other. And so there's no end to it until you reach the end of time because they're just always bouncing.
Right.
But I went and listened to the first episode or re-listened to it, and there were a few things that I definitely wanted to make sure that I clarify so that there's no confusion. And I should also start with the caveat of this whole podcast being that I work in veterinary sciences, but I am not myself a reptile veterinarian. And so specific medical advice should come from a reptile veterinarian. They are hard to find, but they're becoming more common every year. They're more being trained. So that is the context in which my answers exist, but please don't take it as veterinary advice directly. And so you'd ask me what to do when an animal tests positive. And so we don't know if this is actually viable for serpentivirus, but this is my personal educated opinion and kind of where that comes from. So if you are electing not to euthanize and it is a subclinical animal, I think doing nothing and managing as your risk appetite seems fit is a perfect option. I think you can rehome as a single snake pet home, put it in a display tank in your living room, partition your colony, whatever kind of makes the most sense in the situation. If it is a actively sick animal with a respiratory infection, you should take it to a vet. You should get antibiotics for it, which will treat any sort of secondary bacteria that might be contributing to the animal being sick. I would increase the hot side to at least 95 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the recorded thermal maximum of a wild python, so the animal can voluntarily warm itself and increase its metabolism and immune system. And so that's how I would approach it. And while we don't know that this specifically would work for Nido, there have been experiments with snake fungal disease, which include prairie rattlesnakes being treated for snake fungal by heating, and then observations of voluntary fever in wild pygmy rattlesnakes with snake fungal that will stun themselves for extra long and heat themselves up to increase their immune system. And this also creates disfavorable conditions for the pathogen itself, as well as increasing the snake's immune system. So that is my not off the cuff answer for how to deal with that. And then once that snake is healthy again, what to do at that point is really circles back to your risk appetite. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that Dawn dish soap is not a sanitizer. So you can clean with it and it'll help, like washing your hands helps, but it itself is not a sanitizer and should not be used as a standalone agent. Like even a simple sanitizer like Simple Green isn't expensive and could be layered in pretty cheaply. So those are my two corrections that I wanted to make sure I put out there to make sure that I didn't have any ambiguity in my answers. And then past that point, open for all questions.
Cool. Well, Pat,
I do want to just add like one quick thing, just specifically on one of the things that you just said. And this is the whole reason that I'm here, is to like make this stuff relatable to husbandry for everybody. That's kind of my goal here. And that's one of the things I like listening to you talk about this stuff, because you keep a whole bunch of pythons. And, some of the people that like to get in these conversations don't necessarily do that. If we're going to increase a hot spot to 95 degrees, it definitely needs to be said that the enclosure has to be large enough to still have a sufficient thermal gradient to get away from that, because any even relatively brief exposure to 95 degrees is going to cause a level of stress that's unacceptable. So just as a little side note to that, just if you're increasing to a serious hotspot, make sure that there's a big enough enclosure to have a good enough gradient where they can also move away from that.
Dr. Tillis, for how long would you keep that 95 hotspot? Like, is
that's just
until it goes away, or like, what do you mean?
Yeah, that's just until it goes away. Yeah, that is when you're looking at a sick snake and you have nothing else. if it's either euthanizing it or I want to do something, that's my do something.
Yeah. Pat, you've heard this method before, and I'm not sure you have, Adam, but you know, I heard from Gary and a couple other guys, probably mainly Gary, but if there's an sign of RI, put them in the incubator where it's more, you know, the heat is contained at a certain point, but then even if it goes away, I mean, do you still recommend, Dr. Tillis, you should still take it to the vet and get it checked out, even if it's in the incubator and that RI seems to go away after a few days? Or what's your suggestion?
So taking it to the vet is mainly for antibiotics, because oftentimes when you have a sick animal, there is a bacterial component, and we do not know how that fits into the equation. And so that's really where a vet becomes part of the equation. If that animal clears up, like again, at that point, it's probably not safe to consider it negative, even if it tests negative. But you know, at that point, and again, it kind of circles back to what your risk appetite is for a non-clinical but potentially positive animal, and that's kind of no different than where you started in the first place. You know.
Chris, yeah. What do you think, Pat?
Two things about that, and these are two, like, could potentially be two really deep discussions, but I think I'll just mention the first one because we can circle back to it. One of the things that I had written down about because I watched the original episode about halfway through and then went back and watched it when it was live. I watched it about halfway through, and then I went back a couple of days ago and watched the entire thing start to finish. One of the things that you had said in that episode that relates to what you said just now was if it walks like Nido and talks like Nido, and you know the potential for a symptomatic animal being positive, even if it's not testing positive. But a little bit of an issue that I take with that idea is that, and this is the thing I think we should circle back to later because I know you'll agree with me on this. There's like 9 million things that can kill your snake, and there's like 6 symptoms. Snakes don't, there are, especially if we just lump together RI symptoms as one thing, you know, because there's a couple of different, you know, there's excess mucus or coughing, sneezing, bubbling, blah, blah. If you lump that together as one thing, you have RI, anorexia, bloating, lethargy, stomatitis, I mean, what a weird fecal stuff, regurg, there's 7. I mean, those are like the maybe wasting, you know, there's just not a whole lot of things. So like snakes are really, really fucking good at hiding their illnesses. I've cared for literally tens and tens and tens of thousands of snakes in my life, working at various jobs and with my own collection. And I can't tell you the number of times I've seen a snake that seemed perfectly healthy. I mean, perfectly healthy, just roll right over, you know? And so my point is that, you know, I think while there's absolutely merit to treating the animal as if it has nidovirus from a perspective of, you know, just your husbandry and you know, quarantine protocols or whatever you want to say about that, treating it as if it has Nido. But I disagree that, you know, just because it has RI symptoms could mean that, you know, that there's a great chance that it actually has Nido and it's just a false positive or whatever, because there's just so many other things that can cause those types of symptoms.
I think that is actually a really spot on assessment, that there really is not a whole lot of clinical signs that snakes can show.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it can circle back to having a reptile veterinarian you trust, and that there is a limited number of clinical signs, but it's the certain combinations and how severe they are that kind of point you down a specific path. And so walk, talks, and acts like Nido to me is no sorts of neurological anything, like it's really just respiratory stuff. A lot of times there is secondary bacterial, but a lot of times we are finding that what we thought was bacterial has a viral layer on top of it, and you probably aren't going to be able to unstack the two. And so
Yeah.
that's where the antibiotics become potentially a pretty important part of the conversation. But you are absolutely right in that there are other things that cause respiratory infection that are not Nido that would be easy to miss, but a lot of times those things are also paired with other clinical signs that aren't related to respiratory stuff, and that can kind of
Yeah.
guide your path a little bit more specifically. So yeah,
Yeah.
that is a totally valid point, that respiratory infection alone and negative tests are not enough to say it's probably a positive regardless, but it is also an extremely common scenario to have an even mildly divergent virus that is missed on tests. And so if all other stuff remains similar and it's a snake that looks like a positive Nido test, it could be likely that your test is missing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's it. There's just I agree with all of that, and just think it's an important distinction. And that kind of leads me into the other thing that this is kind of one of the things that fascinates me about this. When we're talking about the presence of bacterial infections and other symptoms that can be along for the ride, and how it is exceedingly difficult to like try to tease all of that stuff apart, right? And one of the things that I've been doing testing with Chad is that if I know what I'm looking for, he can run a PCR for it, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely. Yep.
Chad and I do, and shout out to Chad Lytle at RAL, because I have a bias for the amount of work that I do with him, because his lab is 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. And so I can pick up a snake at FedEx, and his lab is in between FedEx and my quarantine space, which is here at my shop, which is 15 miles from my house. And I can unbox a snake in the lab and swab it and hand him a swab before I even come drop the snake off at quarantine. But it's convenient, but also he and I do a lot of just playing around with stuff, running different bacteria and stuff like that. And it still doesn't show a whole lot, because a lot of the bacteria that we find are just the things that are kind of there anyways,
Yes, absolutely.
And
yep.
yeah. And so, but even some of those bacteria that, like, in an animal that's immunocompromised, can become extremely problematic. And there can be strains of common bacteria that can be extremely problematic. But the thing that I want to ask you to continue this exact conversation is there actually evidence that the virus by itself is fatal at all, or commonly fatal, without
Yes, there
some type?
is.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. And so the reason we know that is because of something called Koch's postulates. And so Koch's postulates is all the steps you have to do to prove something is a causative agent of disease. And so what you
Okay.
first have to do is you start with a sick animal. You think you've figured out what is making this animal sick. You then collect and grow in the lab the pathogen that you think is making that animal sick. And then you take that purified culture, reinfect totally naive animals, and if they develop the same disease progression and show the same clinical signs, then you know that
Mm,
that is what causes the disease. And so that has
yeah.
100% been done with ball python nidovirus. And so we know
Oh,
that
wow.
ball python nidovirus alone is enough to cause clinical disease.
Wow.
But that has
Okay.
not been done for every strain of Nido. That hasn't been done with every
Yeah.
species. That has, so that's where it gets complicated. But like, there is
Yeah.
absolutely enough evidence to say that nidovirus alone can kill animals.
Okay. Yeah. And I think it's also the interesting thing with green trees is that I hate to even say this without any kind of real like proof of it, but man, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of green tree pythons, and one of the problems with anything related to chondros is sample size. But if there's like anybody in the world who, between conversations and the data that I look at and my own personal experience, I've got a decent sample size on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And seems like chondros are, aside from nidovirus, are just prone to immunosuppression for various reasons, the stresses of reproduction and things like that. And so in an animal that seems to already be prone to immunosuppression, nidovirus almost seems to act like like it's chondro AIDS, right? And just like causes, and I don't know if there's any evidence that it does this, but it seems to cause severe immune suppression, and they're just so much more susceptible to just random bacterial infections and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's. I think I can agree with that. They and I think that kind of goes into them needing a little bit more refined husbandry parameters. All the
Yeah.
things that they have a reputation for that they get it kind of honestly like is sort of built into the biology of the animals themselves. I don't
Mhm.
know if that we have anywhere near clarifying enough of a picture to say that like AIDS that the virus might be causative of suppressing the immune system so much as just
Mhm.
another tax on the immune system. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
if the immune system is a bucket, it's another hole in the bucket, and green trees have a
yeah,
pretty thin bucket. You know,
yeah.
that's
That's a great way
that's
to say it.
yeah.
So to that point, Patrick, is that why you feel like yourself and myself and other chondro keepers go with puppy pads and paper because that's the most sanitary way husbandry wise versus using cocoa chip or some sort of a dirt substrate?
I think that that's a part of it because it's definitely easier to manage things when you're doing kind of a more sterile type of setup. There's like anything else, there's drawbacks. Chondros aren't the only thing I keep on. I keep all kinds of stuff on puppy pads and um, like human incontinence pads too. Any of my younger things that don't, like a lot of my small vipers when they're young that don't defecate frequently, keep them on that too. There's a lot to be said for that when you, especially if you have a large collection and you're trying to manage things like forward flies and which the forward flies are probably a super weak vector for crypto, but we know that they can be. And you'd be real hard pressed to convince me that they could transmit Nido, but I'm sure it's possible, right? Especially with like highly symptomatic animals or whatever. So, particulate substrates, everybody used to use cypress mulch back in the day. I love cypress, but I don't keep any of my chondros on it because it just seems easier to manage a lot of this stuff. So yeah, MJ, I think that's a part of it. But I also, for me, I use the puppy pads because they're specifically designed to capture animal waste. That's like, I'm using them for what they're used for. It's not like that's what they're designed for, but also because they release humidity very slowly. I can get them wet and they maintain humidity in the enclosure very gradually. They don't dry out at the same speed. So that's what I like about them.
And Dr. Tillis, in your own collection, especially when you were discovering some of your snakes that were positive for Nido, were you keeping them on a certain substrate, and did you switch to paper or anything once this was happening, or what was your game plan with substrate?
When I was actively dealing with a sick colony, I was using unprinted newspaper and had used unprinted newspaper for years. But even in the peak of outbreak, I believe I was keeping basically I keep everything on cypress mulch now, and have had perfectly adequate success with it. I also kept stuff on paper for years and had perfectly adequate success with it. Like there's a wide range of what can work. I've kind of gone back and forth on if like giving them the most sterile environment possible makes them more likely to be immunocompromised versus exposing them to whatever.
Low level stuff. Yeah.
But like there's not a firm answer either way, in the same sense of like I kept stuff on paper for a decade for years. I've been keeping stuff on cypress for almost a decade for years, and and both have pros and cons, and I could probably pursue a path that says you want to reduce the amount of stuff it's exposed to, and the most sterile way to do that is puppy pads and bedding. And I can also say I want to increase the immune system of the animal itself, and so I'm not afraid to expose them at least of something like I don't want to be too sterile because there's some benefit to that as well. And I don't know that it's a right or wrong. It's kind of pursuant to where the strategy ends up. Like we really just
Yeah.
don't know. The book's not written.
But if you are going to use some sort of substrate like cypress mulch or cocoa chip, you got to have a regular plan to cycle that out, right? Like you can't, for instance, go a year with just using the same substrate and just, spot cleaning, like and my question to even you, Dr. Tillis and Adam, because I know Adam uses cocoa chip, like how often are you guys cycling your substrate? Like how often do you change the cypress mulch? And then I want to know when you do yours too, Adam.
So at minimum, at least twice a year, but more as needed. So it'll be more frequent as needed if the bedding is. So what I like about cypress mulch is that you can tell based on the color of it if it's too wet or too dry, and kind of
Yeah.
throw enough of it away or mix it as see fit. But I've also done quite a bit of experimentation with bioactive, which is never fully replacing the substrate and only partially removing some and just refreshing as needed. And again, very early stages to say, and I've been doing it for a decade and it's never caused me problems, but like, there, I have done a full range from the most sterile possible to bioactive, which is almost counter to that. And I don't, the conclusion is unwritten.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
I mean, I've got like, I wouldn't, it's obviously not bioactive. I don't have any plants in there, but I have springtails in there, and I just kind of, remove substrate and completely clean the area where there's any waste. And I'll get down to the PVC and scrub that down with whatever, hydrogen peroxide or a Clorox wipe or whatever I have on hand, alcohol.
Right.
And then spread it back out. And as the level of the substrate goes down, I just add to it. So
there's
could be a horrible thing to do. I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say there's never a time where you just clean it all out and replace it all. It's all by piece. Like, so basically wherever you see fit, you just take it out and then, okay, I'm down to the PVC, clean it, and then just add new substrate in that part of the cage only.
Yeah. I mean, I've done full enclosure changes, but I haven't in a while.
And Patrick, I know you've dabbled with using substrate other than paper at some point in your career.
Oh, yeah.
And I've noticed I've gone back and forth too, but I'll tell you guys one thing, especially after having a mini split, there's particles that just float from the substrate into your room, into the AC unit. Cause I remember having to like clean the filters and seeing like brown residue from the substrate. And my room smells like there's a certain smell that the substrate gives out even after having it for so long. So how much is that to consider? And Patrick, what was your experience going back and forth with that?
Oh, I dust is a problem. And I've been keeping snakes long enough that we used crushed walnut shell and play sand and gravel and shit like that in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've used every substrate in existence. I used to work in pet stores where we use that green carpet shit in all the cages. So I used to remember scrubbing urates out of those things. I currently use cypress mulch. I use cypress mulch mixed with potting soil for snakes that create a little bit more waste because it'll need a little bit more humidity. I use aspen bedding. I use paper towels. I use puppy pads and human incontinence pads. I use a lot of leaf litter. I use a whole lot of oak and magnolia leaves. This is one of the things I love about leaf litter is that over your particulate substrates, you can do a lot of spot cleaning without getting a lot of waste down into the substrate just by removing leaf litter that has waste clumped up on it. I also use sphagnum moss sometimes that I mix with some of these things. Like it just depends. And the frequency with which I do total substrate changes is entirely dependent on the species and the size of the enclosure and the amount of waste that they produce. So like I have a gaboon viper that's like, like a legitimately big gaboon viper. She's over 5 feet long and just a monstrous snake. I do her full substrate maybe once a year, maybe. She hates me for it every time. But when I spot clean her, she's so big that when I spot clean, I have to use a big ass dustpan. Like her waist clump is, 15 inches across. And yeah, because I feed her like 8 times a year, and she shits like 4 times a year. So
like a blood python.
you know,
thing.
yeah, it's exactly like that. Except
Yeah.
that she shits even less frequently than a blood python.
And her bites are a
But
lot
then
more.
I have, yeah, for sure. Blood python's not something to get bit by either, though. That snake will fuck you up, man.
I'll take a blood over. I'll take a blood over.
Oh,
Gaboon
yeah.
all day.
Over a gaboon all day. I mean, I got chewed on by a Brettles
No
python
contest.
a couple days ago. So,
Fuck that.
yeah, I know I don't talk about it a whole lot, but I've been on the show, and a lot of people think I'm just a chondro guy, but I have like 23 species of vipers at my house, and I work diligently to keep my fucking fingers out of their mouths. So, especially that big gaboon, gaboon vipers are not super toxic, but the yield is ridiculous. So anyways, then I have other stuff like the mangrove snakes that are super messy. I have actually gone back and forth about using cypress with my chondros. And the main reason that I don't do it is because I've been shifting I've got a whole bunch of brand new PVC cages and a bunch of those new Cambro tub racks that shout out to Stephen and Ashley with Focus Q Habitats making stuff for me. But the cypress gets them dusty, and I spend a shitload of money on those cages because they look fucking dope. So it's literally because I'm not scared of using cypress mulch with my chondros, but in relation to Nido virus, so I have a separate room for my Nido animals, and this kind of goes back to what we're talking about, the argument of whether or not they, I think for healthy animals, there is a good argument for low level exposure to stuff helping to strengthen their immune system. But I feel like with the Nido positive stuff, I have often lost animals in small waves and in adjacent enclosures, and whether that was tubs in a rack or tubs on a shelf or even PVC enclosures. And that's happened to me. I've been testing all of my stuff for 6 years, and that's happened to me more times than I can think of off the top of my head, where I lost 2 animals in enclosures that were side by side inside of a week, sometimes 3 animals inside of a week or 2, and they all went symptomatic at the same time and showed a similar progression of symptoms. I can't help but think that that's a bacterial thing on top of the Nido, or so, I went from almost, and I hate to say it this way, but almost thinking it was less important to stay on top of their stuff because it's like, well, fuck, they already have Nido virus. You know what I'm saying? To now being like, and there's a problem with this because every time I'm in that room, there is a risk, right? Every time I walk in there, there's a risk to the rest of my collection, no matter what I'm doing, right? So far, I've been real good about that, and I maintain a huge collection, and I'm very blessed to have all these different completely separate spaces that I can keep things, and I think my protocols work just fine. But I think that my frequency of water changes, frequency of cleaning, staying more on top of that room specifically, I feel like I would have much less loss out of there if I kept everybody's water a lot cleaner and it kept everybody a lot cleaner. And it's not, I don't lose animals in there very frequently. It's like once or twice a year, I lose 1 or 2 animals, and if it's multiples, they're almost always back to back.
And you have snakes breeding in there as well, right, Pat? They're not just
absolutely. And that's almost all the time that I get symptoms. It's females that are breeding, almost every single time.
And we obviously know breeding causes some sort of stress, because you've heard numerous times people who've had Nido positive snakes do fine until you pair them up, and then all of a sudden they kick the bucket. Then also there's also cases where people don't know they have a Nido positive snake until they pair up and they go, what the fuck just happened? And then boom. So stress is definitely an indicator. But then going back to the substrate topic, if we could just super chat or ask this question real quick, because Coach Rice says, regarding cypress mulch, how critical is it to use 100% pure cypress versus a blend in terms of potential of irritant irritants of the
Irritants.
irritants of the animal's lungs. You know, and that, with that being said, like, you know, with this particle stuff going in the air, wouldn't this kind of make this Nido potentially airborne if stuff's coming from a Nido positive enclosure and just kind of like drifting into the next enclosure over, or how would that work?
So as far as the aerosolization of it, typically, at least, so two parts. The bedding I use is pure cypress mulch, and I'm just lucky in that Eugene bulk orders it by the truckload, and so I can just have a pallet, and that's not an issue. It's like the same jungle floor that EcoWorth or ZoomEd uses. So it's been pretty frowned upon to use blends, especially if they have feeder in them. So pure is better, and I don't have the experience to say that a mix is safe or not. But as far as the aerosolization, in my experience with cypress mulch, I only get that aerosolization if it's really dry bedding, which tends to not be great for the virus. Like, the conditions that I get a lot of that dry bedding are not the conditions that they're coming out of a sick snake's cage. And so I don't think it is a huge factor in the aerosolization of it, but it could be non-zero. It's more just the easiest transmission is probably saliva, and I think a saliva-ridden piece of particulate would have harder time becoming as
Floating.
airborne. Yeah.
Even if it dries up, like even if the saliva happens to dry up over time, you're saying it's not an issue.
Ooh. We really just don't know. We just don't have the tools to be able to say there is X amount of live virus left in dried snake mucus. Like that, these are questions you could answer, but you'd have to set them up in an experimental way, and that work just hasn't been done. And so it's really just anyone's best guess. And in terms of where I rank stuff, the aerosolization of the substrate is not the highest on my list.
Yeah.
I just want to add real quick with the with my blood pythons that are in tubs, those, like, if they go to the bathroom and their substrate, the whole tub gets dumped and they get all fresh substrate because it's a lost cause. And it's going to be that way when they're in enclosures as well. I mean, just the volume, you know, it's just a different species compared to a boa or a carpet python, you know, where it's just the volume is just so much different.
Yeah. We're gonna say something, Pat?
Well, yeah, I was just, while he was saying that, I was flashing back to being over at Bill's house and seeing one of his big female bloods that had just made a mess, and he had her on paper, and I'm like, how in the fuck do you keep these things on paper? She's like, we slid that tub, and I was like, whoa, yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I should clarify, most of what I keep numerically is blood pythons, so that is tainting a lot of my answers as well.
Yeah. So two things. One of the questions I had on the list here was specifically with nidovirus, does it look like, because this is what it looks like to me, that saliva is like the main vector for transmission?
Right.
Yes. And so I can even build on that, in that the area that we see it first in an infection is the mouth. And so saliva is going to be the obvious case for it. When it makes it into the lung, that's when we see those like animals that are truly dying.
Yeah.
So that is, I don't know that we have enough data to say like the difference between a sick animal and a healthy animal is that the sick animal has it in its lung and the healthy animal just has it in its mouth, but it will start in the mouth. And because it starts in the mouth, it seems like mucus would be the easiest place for it to transfer to another mouth.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Go ahead, Pat.
I also wanted to know, while we're talking about, you know, because MJ had asked about particulates and potentially being airborne and dried saliva and all that. Have you guys looked at, because I've seen conflicting information on this, have you guys looked at how long it really does live on surfaces, like to where it's still communicable?
Yeah.
So that was not directly on surfaces, but we did environmental stability by having, so like in order to grow the virus, I need to grow it in a liquid. And so that's how I have
Hmm.
I know how much virus is in this tube. And then how
Yeah.
long does it take for it to quit becoming infectious after whatever time point, after whatever temperature. And so from that, we can say that there will be total inactivation at the end of 2 weeks at room temperature. But the graph looks like that. So like the first 48 hours is where you lose about 80% of the infectious virions, but it'll kind of plateau out and have a bit of a leading tail that can last all the way to 2 weeks. And so like,
Okay.
what is the virus that makes it at the end of 2 weeks? Is that like a more environmentally stable one? What happens if that strain became, like, so
Yeah.
yeah, it could be its own branching off point of a conversation, but like, we did not have any last more than 2 weeks, and most last significantly shorter than that.
I know you talk. I know we've talked about this privately, but let's say you had like a large bioactive enclosure set up and you wanted to use it for another species and you didn't want to break the whole thing down and destroy it. How long would you recommend somebody take an animal out of that enclosure and then leave it free of any reptiles before
Putting something else.
introducing another animal?
I mean, if you wanted to do it in a way that had zero risk, then you couldn't do it. So like there is always going to be some level of risk. Like what you might have introduced something that might be able to persist or might be able to sustain itself. I mean, but the longer you go, the safer you would be if you're removing parts of the substrate or cage decoration. But like, this is me pulling up a number out of literally nowhere. But like, I would wait a year before I'd even consider it. And it's like
Okay.
depends on if like, oh, I'm putting the exact same species in from the same background, then maybe I'm less worried than if it's like closely related but not the same species. Maybe that's a higher risk. But maybe if it's like if I'm taking a snake cage and not putting a lizard in it, maybe that's no risk, or maybe that's higher. Like we don't know. It depends on the circumstance and your risk appetite, but
I'm glad you asked that, Adam, because you know that snake that rolled on me that I got from Chad Brown, the real nice blue one, Patrick.
Yeah.
That cage has been empty because I'm scared just fucking shitless to put anything in it. I mean, the snake didn't die of Nido. It had a fucking tumor on its heart, but still, like, I didn't test it after it died. You know what I mean? And so
just bleach it and forget about it, dude.
I'm like 6 months away from it being a year. I might just wait it out.
They're talking about a bioactive enclosure where there's like, a sustainable environment in there. If you throw something out in the sun and hit it with some bleach, there's not a whole lot that's going to stay alive on those surfaces.
Turn the heat up in there.
Yeah.
Bleach is great. UV is great. The only thing bleach isn't good for is cryptosporidium, which is unfortunately something we have to worry about a fair bit. But peroxide will take care of that. And so, different strategies for different things, different risks. Like if you're keeping a bunch of colubrids and crypto's more likely to be a problem, maybe you prioritize that type of sanitation. If it's pythons, maybe you can live with it. But pythons aren't zero, so it's
Yep. That leads into the one of my other questions that was really interesting to me that we just barely touched on a little bit on the last one. You're talking about different disinfectants, and you said that basically everything that you tried killed it within a minute, with the exception of chlorhexidine. I think you said it was like 3 minutes or something like that.
I think I was wrong. I think it was peroxide that actually took the 3 minutes, but everything worked within 3 minutes. And I'd have to check. It was the
what was the concentration of the peroxide?
I think it check. I don't remember.
Okay.
It was so there was 5 different sanitizers that we used, and all of them worked within 3 minutes, and 4 out of the 5 worked within 1 minute, and the one that didn't work within 1 minute still reduced it by a lot. It just didn't do complete inactivation.
Do you remember what the 5 things were?
Yeah, let me just pull it up real quick. It's
okay.
Shout out to everyone chilling in the chats. You guys are awesome. Hit that like button.
Yeah, be careful with 12% hydrogen peroxide if you use that, kids. Be careful with that.
Seriously.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That's the other risk too, is that the sanitizer you use can also be harmful to you. So
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep a lot of different things around. I use rubbing alcohol and as well. When I'm talking about all of my cleaners, not just like for sterilization and sanitizing, but I've got peroxide, alcohol, chlorhexidine, dish soap, bleach, vinegar. All those things have different uses.
But okay, but Patrick, on that topic, how do you know when to use what? Is it just because of feeling, or like how do you know which one?
No, that's a great question. So like I keep vinegar is mostly acetic acid, which does a good job of separating organic from inorganic stuff. It's used in all kinds of chemical processes. So if I'm like doing a quick rinse on one of my buckets that I thaw out feeders in, I hit it with vinegar and rinse it out really quick.
Okay.
I use alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and I use 70% because I learned a while back that the 90+% stuff actually evaporates too quickly and doesn't have the contact time to do what it's supposed to do. So high percentage alcohol is great for soaking, but it's not great for quick spot cleaning and surface treatments. So I use 70% rubbing alcohol for, I clean my phone with it at least once a day. Your phone is a fucking common contact point. Motherfuckers don't know how they're spreading diseases around their collection. It's because they're in every different space touching their phone every 5 minutes. My the doorknobs to my room, I just have spray bottles of 70% alcohol all over my house and my snake house and at work. They're everywhere. That way it's just always on my mind. Any room that I'm in, there's a bottle of alcohol that's nearby, and I can spray down stuff if I need to. But alcohol is just great for spot cleaning as well. And I clean feeding tongs with it. So,
and it's not watered down, right? It's just straight 70%. You said alcohol?
Yeah, 70% alcohol. It needs to have that much water in it so that it doesn't evaporate too quickly to actually kill things. Chad, one time when I was in the lab, it was kind of a joke, but it's also kind of serious. He dipped a pair of tweezers into some 99.9% like medical grade alcohol, and then he held a lighter to it and like caught it on fire. And he was like, "There's nothing alive on that surface now." And I was like, "Well, yeah, it's not like a practical way to clean your stuff all the time with fire," but it was pretty funny. Yeah, I spray feeding tongs, so like I have sets of feeding utensils for different racks, different rooms, there's all these different sets. And if I'm feeding, so like one of my main adult chondro room for stuff that doesn't test positive, I have a set of tongs for them, big 24-inch tweezers, and I'll go through and feed multiple animals with those. But if one of them bites the tong, I go and set it over my sink and I spray it down with alcohol, and I grab the next set and I start with that one and I rotate through all of the sets because it's been sitting long enough where I'm confident that the alcohol is killed something on that surface. But also my water in my house is set to 150 degrees. And so I after I've sprayed it with alcohol, before I put it back in the rotation, I hit it with 150-degree water. Is that perfect? Absolutely not. But goddamn, it's better than nothing. It's way better than nothing. Most of the stuff we're doing, none of it's perfect, and all of it, every precaution you can take is better than not doing it at all.
Yeah, pretty much fully agree with that. And then, yeah, in terms of like the circumstances to pick out specific sanitizers, a lot of that, again, like might circle back to having access to a quality reptile veterinarian, because there are a lot of different pathogens out there, and a lot of them are responding to different sanitizers or not. And so it is probably intimidating and a lot to ask for someone starting at zero to jump into a conversation about where to even start on sanitizers for pathogens. And so like, if you're starting at zero, like try to find someone who's not starting at zero is that. But so the paper that I did is titled In Vitro Characterization and Antiviral Susceptibility of Ophidian Serpentiviruses. So I encourage anyone to look up that paper. It has a lot of the basic biology information that we know about these viruses from studying them and growing them in the lab. So I tested 10% bleach, 70% ethanol, 2% chlorhexidine, F10, 7% peroxide. And it was the 7% peroxide that took the full 3 minutes for inactivation, but there was still, after 1 minute, like almost a 50% decrease in log titer, which is like, I think would be to the power of 10. So it's still doing a lot at a minute, but it took 3 minutes and everything else was fine at a minute. So a
Interesting.
lot of good choices to manage serpentivirus. Ethanol is a great one. And one of my go-tos in terms of quick on the fly sanitizing.
Yeah.
I forgot
and
about
bleach, if you really want to just kill some shit, as long as you know that it doesn't kill crypto, bleach is just my go-to for soaking things. And I
Yes.
run through a lot of bleach at the house.
Yeah, if you're starting from nowhere, starting from bleach is also a good, like, bleach will cover most of it except crypto. But
Right.
it is also potentially releases volatile fumes, and so you need to manage it appropriately. And so, typical bleach rules.
Yeah, you don't want to use that inside of an enclosure with an
Yeah.
animal in
Yep.
it.
No, yeah, I only use bleach on enclosures when the enclosure is outside and uninhabited, and especially if like something died in that enclosure or something like that. It's getting, and everything. I'm fortunate that I have like hella extra tubs for all my racks and lots of extra caging and space. I know that we have to factor in like practical application with a lot of these practices, or just like you have to figure out kind of what works for you. But I just am able to just let things sit, man. I hit stuff with bleach and I just let things sit or let things soak. I've done some interesting things with bleach and soaking for a week, and watch it. Bleach will legitimately dissolve all kinds of crazy shit. I had a tub full of water bowls and stuff, and PVC couplings that I used to hold deli cups and PVC perches in a giant tub of bleach outside for a week. And I watched leaves land in it, and the leaves lose all of their pigment and just become a clear leaf-shaped set of veins. I watched a grasshopper land in there and get like dissolved into just the hardest tissues. I watched sheds and fecal matter literally break down into nothing and disappear. So it's pretty wild to see what bleach will do with a long-term setting. But from my understanding,
was that straight bleach? Like just
no,
not
at all. It was probably somewhere in the 10% solution range.
Okay.
Wow.
It was probably roughly 10%, maybe 15% at most. And
let me put it this way: when I grow flasks of serpentivirus, when I throw them out, I bleach them.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And from my understanding, almost everything that bleach can kill will die inside of 10 minutes. Like, I think 10 minutes is like the absolute. I was just doing this for fun. I just wanted to see what would happen if I soaked stuff in bleach for a really long time. And man, those PVC couplings looked fucking great when they came out of there.
Yeah, but not the grasshopper. God bless. Jesus.
No, that poor grass. It was one of those big old, they're called like a bird grasshopper. These huge things. I was really bummed out that he landed in there, but it was cool to watch him break down into nothing but chitin. He lost all of his pigment and stuff.
I think most of the bleach you get from the store is like what, 8 or 9% concentration. I know the stuff I get at work for disinfection is like usually anywhere from 11 to 13% concentration. It's super potent sodium hypochlorite.
When I say 10%, what I mean is I was using 9 parts water and 1 part bleach.
Yeah.
And
you're just using like Clorox, I'm assuming, just regular.
Yep, just regular old Clorox bleach, man.
You can look on the label. I think that's like 7 or 8% concentration.
Gotcha.
Wow. So it's safe to say you got to be careful with the bleach for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And don't ever mix it with ammonia. It releases toxic gas if you mix bleach with ammonia.
Don't mix it with anything.
Ask me how I know.
Just water.
Dr. Tillis, you talked about this, I believe, on the first episode. I want to get Patrick's take because obviously one of the things I'm very, I do my best to give every section its own forcep, but I feel like just sanitizing my forceps after use is just something I feel safer doing. For the most part, since you got so many different animals and you got a whole Nido room, Patrick, like how are you sanitizing your forceps after they're being used, or what's a method that you've used that seems to work for you?
I use bleach. First of all, every room that I have, almost every room that I have, has its own set of like feeding utensils and stuff. And like just in my baby room, the baby room is just wall to wall all the way around 6-quart and 15-quart tubs. And I've got like triple sets of everything just for that one room. And I use alcohol for short term. But when I'm done, I often will bleach stuff. And but one thing you got to know is if you bleach your metal utensils, you can only let them soak for a few minutes. They'll start to corrode real fucking fast. You'll come in and there'll be like rust in the container and there'll be stains on them. So, 10 minutes is all you need to bleach soak your utensils. But I do. And then the other thing that I do is I have I run baby room utensils in my own dishwasher in my house, but over in the snake house, after things have been disinfected, I also like water bowls, which I mostly use deli cups, but I do have a lot of ceramic water dishes for some of the bigger snakes and bigger enclosures. Water bowls, bamboo is dishwasher safe, I've discovered. All those things go in the dishwasher after they've been disinfected, and then they sit out and dry on the counter and go back into the rotation. That's bowls, utensils, everything.
That's pretty spot on what you do, Dr. Tillis, or what's your if you could refresh us how you like to pursue keeping your forceps clean and whatnot after they're being used.
Yeah, so I don't swap forceps between animals in a like a specific breeding group because they're already being exposed to each other. But outside of that, I sanitize between uses. And if you have two, a lot of times that's helpful because you can sanitize one while the other is waiting. So I use F10 for that particular use case, but ethanol would be fine, bleach is fine. So yeah, what I use in combination is F10, which is a quaternary ammonium, and then 70% ethanol. And so depending on the use case, I'll use one or the other, but I try to use both so that there's not if you are only using one sanitizer, it leaves a little bit more room for stuff to fall through, whereas you can kind of use in combination. So even bleach, one of the things you mentioned about stuff rusting really easily in bleach, but if you wipe it down with ethanol after treating it with bleach, it will not rust, and also you are adding another sanitizer to it. Not that it really needs it after bleach, but just as an example of you can layer this stuff together as well.
The alcohol and bleach are definitely my two go-tos for actually disinfecting stuff. I use dish soap to scrub things, but bleach and alcohol are my go-to for true disinfection.
Good, Adam.
You keep saying ethanol alcohol. Is that what you're using compared to isopropyl?
Were you talking to Tillis, Dr. Tillis?
Yeah, Tillis.
Actually, not sure. I'd have to.
I just wanted to know if isopropyl would be acceptable because that's what I use. I use 70% isopropyl.
I'm not totally sure. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm using is a like premixed hand sanitizer, but it's a 70% ethanol plus a few other things that they throw in. But the base of what's doing stuff is the ethanol. But I actually don't know if their base is. I don't know if it would be isopropyl. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay. I use 70% isopropyl. I'm assuming it's fine. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I would think so.
With all my with my forceps and everything, I usually scrub them down first with Dawn or any kind of whatever dish soap, just to make sure there's no chunks of flesh or hair or anything from the rodent. Because if you dip that into a 10% bleach solution, contact time is everything with bleach. And if that bleach can't get to the center of whatever you're trying to kill or, you know, keep clean, if it can't get in there and disrupt it, then you're gonna, you know, that's an issue too. So I always like rinse things off, scrub them down, make sure that there's no like chunks of bedding or anything either in the bin that I'm going to be soaking in, and then hit it with my bleach. And also, I believe hot water with bleach disinfects better, but it does cause the bleach to dissipate more quickly.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah, you guys had mentioned a little bit at the beginning, like it's, you know, the management of pathogens probably does protect you as a keeper as well, especially as it relates to the rodent stuff. So like one of the most common cryptos we find in snakes is not actually infecting the snakes, but just prey item pass through from the rodents. And so, you know, there isn't a whole lot of examples of reptiles infecting people outside of, you know, maybe salmonella, and a lot of that is a turtle problem more than a reptile problem. But there probably is a non-zero risk from the feeder rodents, and so, you know, that is something to consider.
I jokingly have said that the reason that I've never gotten COVID is because I've built up a coronavirus, immunity from working with Nido positive.
I thought it was from doing yoga in the rain, dude. My bad.
That's probably what it is.
Coronaviruses are a great example in the sense of, like, you obviously had COVID, which was a problem, but I think 3 out of the 5 most common sources of the common cold are coronaviruses. And so, like, these are you can talk about coronaviruses and you can mean this or you can mean that, and there's a whole spectrum in between. And I do think
just like the Nido.
Yeah, I think it projects on pretty well.
Yeah. There's one thing I wanted to bring up. This kind of actually touches back on something from a little bit earlier, but this is more related to the original episode. I wanted to talk about sample degradation a little bit. We're talking about, and maybe this can lead into like talking about how to properly take samples too. I think that's really important. I think there's a lot of garbage videos out there on it, and I think some people make it more complicated than it really is. But the first thing I want to bring up, though, on the last show, you were talking about how quickly and readily the samples can break down, and and how important it is to like ship under certain circumstances. I'm not going to disagree with that because I think that it is really important to think about like how long your samples are sitting, and I think it's very important to try to ship stuff overnight. But I realize that this particular instance is not a huge sample size, but I've seen kind of a trend with this over the years. I one time went to a friend of mine's house and swabbed his whole collection. And it wasn't a huge collection. I want to say we're talking about, it was maybe 20 green tree pythons, maybe. And as a side note, that when we'll get into how to take swabs, I swabbed all of his animals twice. I put 2 swabs in the mouth of every single animal. I went through the whole collection and swabbed them, and then went back through and swabbed every single animal again with a separate swab. And there's no way that took me. I probably did his whole collection, 20 animals, twice in 30 minutes. Okay. Like it shouldn't take like several minutes per snake to swab a snake. But we sent the reason we did it twice is because we sent one set of swabs to RAL and another set of swabs to Fish Head, because he wanted to see.
Both, yeah. Smart.
Fish head, from what I understand, only tests one day out of the week, or at least maybe that was the case back then. I believe it was Wednesdays that they ran their tests, whereas RAL will run tests 5 days a week. So I, the samples that went to RAL, I dropped them off myself the following day. And I can't remember if they got run that same day or the next day, because if they have to be there, they kind of need you to be there by noon if they're going to get them in the same day. But I swabbed these animals on a Sunday. I dropped the swabs off on Monday. They got tested either Monday or Tuesday. But the ones that went to Fish Head, because they got shipped, they didn't get tested until the following week. So it had been like 10 days or whatever it was that they got. And I took the swabs on either a Saturday or a Sunday, and then they got so they got tested 10 or 11 days later at Fish Head. All of the samples, there was, I want to say, 6 positive animals, and the tests were the same from both labs. Every animal that tested positive was identical. All the other animals that were negative were the same animals at 2 days and 10 days or whatever it was.
Interesting.
Yeah, but the factor is more that they were maintained on the cold chain. So once they received that fish head, they probably would have been kept at -80, and at that point degradation is going to stop. So the timeline that when I'm talking about degradation comes from the same paper that I mentioned earlier, where I show 3 different strains of virus at 5 different temperatures between -20, 4 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees, up to 35 degrees Celsius. And so it's the lack of cold chain that is going to degrade it really quickly. And you can see even within 24 hours, you're losing like up to 9 log of, I don't know how that translates into a real number. A lot, you're losing most of that sample. So that it's the importance of a cold chain that is the most significant. And so it's really like if you are shipping stuff in uninsulated containers without any sort of stabilizing agent, your degradation of pathogen is going to be really high. And so you might still end up with positive tests from that if that like there's still virus left at the end of up to 10 days. And so if the test is sensitive enough, it could still potentially pick that out. But in terms of like your low level positive animals, if that sample is not treated with really high priority on keeping it frozen and cold and not degraded, like you will miss out on low level positives just because there's nothing left of the sample.
No, I agree with that completely. And I, just another little note, this was really interesting. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what the time frame was, but I got somebody set up to get some swabs in that were actually taken in Indonesia at a farm over there. And we got a positive on a Boland's python off of a swab that had been taken. Gosh, it was at least 10 or 12 days that it took to get them over, and was definitely not kept in any, cool conditions on the way over there.
Yeah.
And
I was aware of that sample and like this is the part of the conversation where it gets tricky, is that we lost information by not sequencing that positive. We have no idea what that virus is. And so was it a green tree python virus that made it in, or was it something truly unique? And so like that's what I found in a Papuan python, is we found a very divergent virus. And so those obscure python species might have really cool things in them that could get flattened by missing out on that sequencing. It really is an important part of the picture for this pathogen.
That actually brings up another question that I have specifically with green tree pythons. I remember you mentioning that I'm totally paraphrasing here, but you were talking about nidoviruses in different pythons and like serpentovirus diversity, and you said something about this number of them were green tree python viruses. Have you found different genera of serpentovirus in green trees, or have they all been closely related viruses?
They have all been the same genus of serpentovirus, which is
Okay.
called pragodavirus.
Okay.
Most of the python viruses that we see in our sick pythons are pragodavirus. Not all of them. I have pulled out 2 other genus of serpentovirus from pythons, but they aren't the ones that are, as of yet, reported of wiping people's colonies out. So
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, it's when you use that, when you use that, when you say it like that, when you say wiping people's colonies out, I wonder about that a whole lot when people, one of the problems with nidovirus being this like kind of hot topic black sheep thing is I think a lot of people have had their collections wiped out by shit like paramyxo and things like that and blamed it on Nido because it's just like easy to blame it on Nido. And I understand like if that collection that was wiped out is like 7 snakes and you just have shitty like protocols, or you're just like, you know, as most people do, just running through and changing everybody's water bowl with your bare hand back to back and same feeding tongs on every animal and whatever. I suppose I can see somebody's collection dying from nidovirus, but in my experience maintaining this I mean, I've never had a wipeout event maintaining a group of positive animals for 6 years now. And I tend to think that it's either other viruses or combinations of Nido with other viruses or other bacterial stuff that's actually wiping out people's whole groups.
Or being reckless, Patrick, maybe, like if you're not on top of your shit. I mean, that.
Well, that's right. Yeah, that too.
So
doesn't all depend on the strain of the virus though, and the severity of
strain of the serpentovirus is definitely a huge factor in terms of these wipeout events. But I'll push back a little bit on the other pathogens part of it, which is that we just, like, specifically for paramyxovirus, we have a quarantine panel that we offer through our diagnostic lab that includes a pan paramyxovirus, and we just don't see them as frequently. They can absolutely wipe out colonies and kill colonies, but in terms of like the python colonies that are dying of respiratory infection that have nidovirus, what we're finding is nidovirus. But I will agree that it probably is a mischaracterization to say it is wiping out a colony, because even in my outbreak, which is about as bad as what I would consider clinical disease of serpentovirus to be, it wiped out half of the colony. And what is left is a mix of totally healthy animals that I don't trust because they're either positive or have been with positive animals, or you end up with these like slow burn animals that sometimes get better, sometimes don't. So like you can get that scenario where you have a strain that wipes out and kills right off the bat a large portion of a colony, but it's usually never 100%. And usually you are left with animals that are completely fine. And then what? So, you know, I think it probably is not helping the problem when I use a phrase like colony killing, wiping out, because like the virus did not wipe out my colony. The virus wiped out half my colony, and I wiped out the other half because the virus wiped out the first half of my colony, and that was the decision I made. So, you know, that's it is feeding back into the same conversation, you know.
Yeah, I just think it's irresponsible of us to ignore the possibility of lots of other things that can kill our snakes, because we do this thing. Look, I test my pythons that I send out. It doesn't, like, I don't do that for peace of mind of my customers. I do that so it doesn't mean I know I'm never sending out a positive animal. It's if I'm going to send something out and I test it and it tests positive, then I fucking know that animal is testing positive. Like that's the purpose of testing before something leaves. But there's this thing that has developed with chondro people where they think that a clean Nido test from a seller is a clean bill of health, and that is a bad way to think, man.
How did Ryan Fisher say it? Wrong?
Yeah, wrong.
Yeah. I will 100% agree, underline, bold face, that there are more unknowns than knowns. And so there is absolutely stuff out there that is killing colonies that does not have a name, that does not have a test.
Yeah.
And so it's out there. And up until 10 years ago, Nido was in that colony too, or in that category too. Like, sometimes snakes get rest, especially green tree pythons. Okay.
Yeah.
And now we have a word for it.
Well, let's get to this. Let's get to this topic, Patrick, because I know it's important to you. You know, over the last few months, there's been multiple cases of snakes coming from different countries, landing in whoever's collection that got it, and then they all test positive for Nido. You know, we had that Adam Wickens case that happened sometime last year. There was another case where snakes came from Germany over to someone's collection, and then I guess on the third test, they all tested positive in different areas in the country. So why don't you speak on that, Patrick?
Yeah, and actually the Germany thing, it was I think it was their second tests, and that one completely, I'm like flabbergasted. I don't get to use that word very frequently. I'm not going to talk much about that one because it's kind of like an ongoing thing, but those animals all came over and tested negative, went to different places and all tested positive later, which is, for 3 animals it'd be weird, but for 3 animals I wouldn't be surprised, but 13 animals is pretty wild. But the one I wanted to address was the Adam Wickens thing. And the first thing I'm going to say about stuff coming out of Indonesia, because one of the things he harped on in his video was like, he kept saying snakes from Indonesia. Like, basically, I'm not buying anything from Indonesia anymore, although now he has a whole bunch of fucking monitors from Indonesia, but whatever. If you pop on Indogram, that's Indonesian guys on Instagram, I like that we've taken steps to try to acclimate animals better, like soaking. Soaking is a great thing like hydration and stress reduction are your top 2 priorities when you're acclimating a new animal, especially a wild caught. But when you pop on Indogram, you'll see a giant tub, and it's got chondros, Papuan carpets, scrubs, white-lip pythons, all being soaked together in a big tub. Man, if you want to fucking guarantee that one sick snake gets all the other snakes sick, you put them all in a fucking tub of water together, man. I mean, it's like the worst thing you could possibly be doing for biosecurity. I say that in quotations because fucking Bruce Carpenter left a bad taste in my mouth with it because he sounds so pretentious when he says biosecurity, but biosecurity is the easiest blanket term for what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, and to be quite fair, like almost any future conversation involving reptile trade and wild animals is going to have biosecurity as like that's what the CITES people are talking about right now.
Yes,
and so we need to be talking about it too.
Yes, absolutely. No, I 100% agree with you. And so with stuff coming from Indonesia, I used to be of the opinion that nidovirus was strictly like thing floating around in captive collections and it wasn't coming from the farms, but that's absolutely false. I was completely wrong about that because I've had all kinds of fresh imports test positive for nidovirus, and whether they picked it up at the facilities they were at or whether they just had it in the wild is left it, it's really, really hard to say, right? Especially without knowing, exactly what species it was, but what species of nidovirus it was. The thing that rubbed me really wrong about the Adam Wickens situation is that, like, I realize he's a YouTuber and it's literally his job to get views for his YouTube videos, but to take advantage of a fucked up situation, and he didn't use Ashley's name in his videos, but anybody could have like figured out. Yeah. And he said things like that he didn't know nidovirus existed. He talked about how much he's been researching green tree pythons for however long before he got them. And I'm like, bro, those two things can't be simultaneously true. You cannot have been doing deep dive researches on captive green tree pythons and also have never fucking heard of nidovirus. Like, there's no way those two things are simultaneously true. One of them's a lie. And he kind of threw Ashley under the bus. And Ashley DeZan, that's Northern Lights Imports. It's, you know, that's just part of being an importer. Things like this happen or whatever, and it's just part of the program. But she's one of the best out there, period. Like she's just, what she does is, there's just very few importers I've ever seen in my life that go through the processes that she goes through and actually cares that much about the animals. And Dan Malary is another one. To me, Dan Malary and Ashley DeZan are two of the best importers on this continent. And when a lot of the things he talked about in that video were like, he basically said it was her responsibility to educate him about the dangers of nidovirus before which an importer is essentially a middleman, okay? And the exporter that she got them from is also a middleman, right? These animals are just like popping from one place to another, and it's just utterly ridiculous. Like, how? Like, really? Are you really going to say it's the importer's responsibility to educate you on all the potential illnesses that a wild caught animal might have? That's just absolutely ridiculous. But she did take accountability for it. And there were people getting refunds. And I've just found out over the last few days that at least 3 people claimed that they had sick and dying animals and that they euthanized all of them, got their refunds, and still have the snakes. Like, literally lied and said that they were all sick and dying and euthanized and got refunds. So
were they posting them somewhere? Like, how do you know this? Like, how do you
yes,
know this?
Yeah. The first one, I don't want to share too many details. I'm not going to put people's names out there, but I was talking to Ashley today, and I'm talking about Adam Wickens and Ashley for sure. But the individuals who are involved in this other stuff, they're not anybody I know. I'm not going to say anything about who they are or how I found out initially. But Ashley told me today that she saw one of the people posting one of the snakes online. Like, it's like one of the snakes that she sold this person that they said died, and she got a refund for it. And this person was posting the animal online.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
So no, it doesn't. And it's really, really scumbag shit to take advantage of an already fucked up situation.
Yeah.
And literally scam the person who's trying to do the right thing, even though it's not her responsibility to pay you back for those snakes. It's really not. She was going above and beyond for an importer to do that. And I also don't like that Adam took advantage of that situation to get views on his YouTube video with his sob story about getting animals with nidovirus. It really sucks that he went through that. I reached out to him before he posted his video and gave him some options about things that he could do with the animals that were still healthy. But if he had, I don't know if he actually euthanized the ones that he said he was euthanizing or not. He was crying about it in his video, literally crying about it in his video. But I told him before he posted the video that he didn't have to euthanize those snakes. So I don't know if he did it or not, but he wouldn't have been able to post his video about it if he actually, if he didn't do that or whatever. So, and he never responded to me after that, after I told him that there were other options other than euthanasia for the healthy animals. I'm saying all of that to say, number one, that it's shitty that people took advantage of that situation for their own gain. But also, Chris Applin, who is, part of this show and was the exporter involved in that, he was also helping out to refund people over that and was deeply concerned about it. Chris is also one of the best people out there doing this. That farm he works at is unbelievable, man. What a facility. The work they're doing over there with monitors and they're breeding chondros and all kinds of stuff. But they're also passing animals through, and it's a large scale operation, and shit like this happens. And it was neither of their responsibility, yet they both took responsibility, Ashley and Chris, to try to make it right. and then people took advantage of that. So here's the point of all of this. I don't care what the source of the animal is. I don't care if it comes from me. I don't care if it comes from the most well-known and well-respected breeders in your country. If you pick up the animal in person, I don't care if it's a fresh wild caught, farm bred, captive bred, imported from Germany. Use your fucking quarantine protocols. Test the animals for the things that are common. You don't have to test them for every known pathogen on the planet. Find out. It'll take you 5 minutes to do it. Find out what the common pathogens, viruses, whatever. It's like the BOID panel where we do nidovirus and arenavirus and paramyxovirus or whatever. Just quarantine your animals regardless of the source. Actually do some research about what might potentially be wrong with the animals when you get them and how to keep that from turning into disease or spreading into your other animals or whatever. Those things are your responsibility. That is your responsibility as a buyer. It's a seller's responsibility to keep their animals as healthy as possible and to try not to sell people sick animals in every way they possibly can. And it's the buyer's responsibility to know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
That's my rant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there is
good.
A lot of room for mismatch in expectations between sellers and buyers with a lot of this pathogen stuff. And so, yeah, it's it's quite frankly the least fun part about the reptile industry is this stuff. The infighting and the
blaming,
mismatch of expectations and genuine fault of a lot of people of making bad decisions, but you know better, you do better. I'm sure that moving forward they aren't willing to take that kind of a loss again, and so they're probably going to do everything within their power to mitigate the chances of that happening again. And so
But then again, you roll the dice. You know what I mean? That's
absolutely.
You take that risk. You go to the casino, you lose thousands. You don't go crying for your fucking money back. It's over.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's kind of to Patrick's point. As the buyer, all that needs to be done: research, preparation, quarantine. Man, that's another thing, right? And I'm a friend of Adam's. I have nothing against him, but if we really want to be real here, are you doing something about all the tree monitors that you have or all the other lizards that you have? Like, how many people are actually quarantining their tree monitors? Yeah. You know what I mean? They're just throwing everything together for the most part. And I'm not just making Adam an example. I'm just saying as a whole, I see multiple fucking people dabbling into other species and they're just only concerned about chondros. Like, that's all they need to test. No, that's not all you need to test. If you want to be real.
I mean, have you ever been to a reptile expo and seen a wholesaler's table and there's every species from every continent mixed together, and the biosecurity is non-existent when that thing goes home, and that's what founds a lot of the animals of the industry, or at least is contributing to the pool that's present, be it the animals themselves or their microbiomes. And so
100%.
There's problems.
And there's no perfect way to do all of this, but man, there's people that do it as well as they can. You ever go to Tinley and go to that back wall and go to the Exotic Empire and look at Josh and Danielle Alder's table, and Ashley hangs out back there with them too. I talked about this on Steven's show just the other day. They are flippers. They're buying and selling stuff. Nobody does it. Like they have just the most immaculate and amazing table, and they're incredible people. There are people that are on the exact opposite end of the spectrum that don't give a shit about the animals. It's all money. They don't give a shit about you. I mean, look, Joe fucking Swatowski still sells snakes. He just uses fake names on MORPHMARKET to do it. I mean, that dude still gets away with selling snakes. He's at the other end of the spectrum.
He's the notorious. Yeah. He's like the notorious fucking NIPO for sure.
And so and MJ, you also nailed it when you talked about the casino thing, and like one of the biggest problems I had with these people talking all this shit about Ashley. Some of them are now trying to say that she's the one that gave the snakes Nido. Come on, man. They briefly, she doesn't even keep pythons. They briefly pass through her facility because that's what she does as an importer and a reseller. And like, that's utterly ridiculous. And you buy imported snakes at a discounted price because you assume more risk with that process. That's the reason they're fucking cheaper, y'all.
Yep.
That's the reason they're cheaper. There is pros and cons and give and take with everything. Don't expect to fucking get a badass deal on something. Now, when you go out and pay $10,000 for a chondro and it comes to you undersized or it has Nido or whatever, that's fucked up. That seller probably could have done a whole lot more before that animal left. But when you're buying $500 imports or $900 imports or whatever, instead of $5,000 or $9,000 captive bred snakes, you're paying 10% of the cost and assuming like a huge percentage more of the risk. That's just part of the program, man. Fucking get it together.
Yeah. And you even said that too, Dr. Tillis, like if you want to take the safe route, you go captive bred, right? Like that's
absolutely.
That's going to be less of a risk in all areas, not just Nido or anything else, but as the health risk, it's a lot less when you go through a reputable breeder that's selling you something captive bred.
Yes, absolutely. Point blank. Yeah.
There's no argument there.
You have some of these species that are like so progressed into captive breeding, they're like they fit any definition of a domesticated species. Like at that point, that animal is a total reflection of the conditions we are giving it as keepers. And like that is an entirely different animal than a wild caught ball python. And the chances of that multi-generational captive bred animal giving you no problems at all its entire life is obviously a lot higher. And so you can take that, give that to anything. That doesn't mean that your captive animal is without risk. It just means that that risk profile is going to look a little different and is probably lower.
Yeah. And if you really love the green tree pythons, why risk? Why take more risk than you need to? If this is something you really want to be a part of, make your life easier, please. You know what I'm saying? It's that simple.
I will also just go so far as to say that like if you want to be a green tree python keeper, you should probably get comfortable with being a nidovirus keeper. Like it's maybe just keeping a green tree python at first before getting to
that's another thing too. Like, I get it. Their excitement for chondros is bigger than ever, but what's the rush of getting a group? What's the whole point of like, I need to get as many as I can, even though I don't even have one? I don't understand that.
Yeah, or do it.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Go ahead.
To build on buying captive bred, buying a captive bred neonate that you raise in your colony is the absolute safest way to have an animal.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. Literally the exact same thing. I was gonna, since you just had Steven Saltzman on the show, I'm gonna shout out to him for that's how he did it, right? Bought a whole bunch of babies, not a whole bunch, but he bought a very well selected, moderate sized group of babies and raised them up and still was diligent about testing and continually testing and very carefully adding animals to his group. And in addition to the fact that he's fucking killing it and producing a whole bunch of really amazing high end stuff, he has a nice group that he trusts, and he's still very strict about his quarantine stuff when on the rare occasion that he brings something in, like Dr. Tillis just said, you buy captive bred babies from reputable breeders, the risk that some of that stuff is going to be infected goes down dramatically. And as a larger scale keeper or as a breeder, if you just treat, as far as biosecurity goes, yes, like test all of your stuff, but also just treat your adults like they have it and keep your babies separate and use simple concepts like fucking gloves and order of operations. And just those two things, just changing gloves and using order of operations techniques will mitigate your risk for pathogen exposure fucking dramatically, dude. I mean, dramatically.
And then not working backwards too, right, Pat? Like not like, there's that sense of like, whenever you do the babies and you go to the adults, don't go back to the babies that day, right?
Yes, all of that. Even in my baby room, I work the racks in an order And inside of the racks, I work the racks in the rack in an order, and it's almost always based on either, if it's multi-species, it's based on species, and if it's chondros, it's based on age. The youngest stuff goes first, and it moves up in that direction. I had a paramyxo outbreak. I had paramyxo make it to my house twice.
Wow.
The first Mangshan vipers that we got, the female ate, and then she didn't eat. This is how paramyxo goes with vipers. It burns them down super fast. They exhibit a super mild RI, like a little clickiness, sometimes a little open mouth breathing, and they'll refuse a meal and they fucking die. Like that's the progression of paramyxo in vipers. That's what happened to the little Mangshan viper. Those are not cheap or common snakes if you don't know what they are. And that male that came with her, I still have him. He lived on my bathroom counter for 6 months after that and got oral and cloacal swabs over and over and over for paramyxo virus. And that animal is now 6 years old, and he's finishing up his brumation a few feet away from me in the shop right now. And
paramyxo virus is like, so we just found a new species of paramyxo virus in a native snake here in Florida, but even outside of us, we got another lab that just published this paper of a novel paramyxo virus they found in a mud snake. They found a bunch of dead mud snakes, found a novel paramyxo virus in them.
Wow.
I think that was potentially the causative agent. And like, there's so many stories like that we probably never get a chance to capture, because this is just a python trapper happened to be walking around in the Everglades and found a bunch of dead mud snakes and made a call and said, hey, I found a bunch of dead mud snakes. And someone checked it out. And because of that, they found this novel paramyxo virus. And like, what is the story behind that? Like, clearly that made it into mud snakes and killed them, but where was it hiding before that? Because if it was hiding in a mud snake, why didn't it kill them? But then it spilled over into a mud snake and killed a bunch of them, but it didn't like kill all the mud snakes. It just killed a few in this area. And so like, there's so much that is unknown. There's so much that is unwritten. And like every day we just pull out one more piece from the Jenga pile and you know, can see it a little bit clearer. But you know, there are so many stories. And I should say that those paramyxo viruses that we're finding are like in no way, shape, or form even closely related to some of the python or viper paramyxo viruses we see. Like the diversity is just immense. It really is. And there's 1,000 stories out there that probably happen daily that unless someone is lucky enough to walk upon it, like we just catch wisps of it, or we see reflections of it in our captive animals. But like, what we experience in our captive animals is not the full picture. It is just as much a reflection of the conditions we give it, but the starting source from this stuff is diverse and it's complicated, and it is very much in the process of being described.
It's going to stay complicated, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. These things move very fast. Like, so serpentoviruses are very long for RNA viruses, but they're still only 35,000 base pairs in length. But that's like 2 to 3 times the size as any other RNA virus, because they can do really shitty but non-zero proofreading of their genome. But even with that mild proofreading, just in one infected cell, there can be enough viral growth that just through sheer dumb luck, there could be a mutation at every point in that genome. Now, it won't be an entirely mutated genome, but every copy of the genome might have 3 or 4 errors, and those just continue to stack up. And so like, these are dynamically changing things. Like, they are not a stationary thing. We can't call a species of serpentovirus a species, because in 50 years from now, it probably won't even be close to resembling it. Like, these things move.
Yeah, it's true. We got 10 minutes left, and Patrick, I'm gonna leave it to you, man. Is there anything else you want to ask Dr. Tillis? And again, don't worry if there's not enough time. We got a round 3. We'll definitely bring them back.
Yeah, so. That's what I was just about to say. Is there's still, I love this conversation. There's still a whole lot of things that I could ask. I actually got through all the important questions on my list. Some of the other things on my list over here were just kind of random things that we could bring up or whatever, but I got through all the important questions. I just rather than ask more questions, because I think that would be better for another episode, I just want to be a broken record and hammer it home, because you use that clickbaity fucking tagline about testing being pointless or whatever in your Instagram story.
I know, Dr. Tillis, did you see the quote at the bottom of the story? It says, "Don't."
I did. You're gonna get me in trouble. Testing is important.
Yeah.
I didn't say you quoted that, and I won't say who quoted it, but I am going to say their initials. I'm just kidding. No, but that was just mainly like Patrick said.
I think it's valid. Like, there are real conversations to have about testing accuracy, especially as it relates to these viruses. And I could see that leaving the impression of testing doesn't matter, but testing does matter a whole lot. It is a tool that we have, and it's a great one that people should use.
Yeah, and I think the next episode, the like testing efficacy and comparisons is still a good subject to keep talking about. But I just I don't, regardless of which lab you choose to go with, I've told you my bias about why I use the lab that I use. I mean, Chad's my friend and he's close by. It's convenient for me, and I like supporting his business. But regardless of what you use or the protocols that you use, test stuff and quarantine everything, man. Just don't take anything for granted.
Right? Just treat it like it has it.
Yep.
Yeah, there's something that was really important that you touched on in the last episode, and this is something that I've struggled with a lot. And when Cody and Pia were pushing this Nido thing real hard about 6 years ago or so, you said, Stephen, in the last episode something about at what point is this just not fun anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that's something we have to factor in. We're doing this for fun. The people, you got the crazy people on the internet who, the crowd that like says that the animals should, the people that try to talk about enrichment and how your green anole needs a 12-foot enclosure and all that stuff, are discounting the baseline idea that reptile keeping is a selfish thing. We're all keeping snakes in boxes selfishly. Like, just keeping captive animals is a selfish thing. That you have to have that as a baseline and admit that. And we're doing this because we enjoy it and it's fun.
Yeah.
But you know what's not fun? Losing your whole fucking collection to diseases. Okay, spending a bunch of money on snakes that roll. That shit fucking sucks. I've done it a whole lot. I've seen more dead chondros than probably any other human ever. Okay. Yeah. And that's, it's just like, learn a little bit. You have the internet and AI and Chat GPT, although don't trust Chat GPT about GTP things. It's still sure. I have people send me AI answers to chondro questions all the time, and I tear them to fucking pieces every single time. There's a lot of, it's because there's not a lot of good published internet information available about green tree pythons. But my point is, do a little bit of research and do your due diligence and spend a few dollars on a test and spend a few weeks quarantining your animal and learn what to look for. And it doesn't have to take away from the fun. I have like 400 fucking snakes. I think I have 135 chondros right now, something like that. And probably a third of my snakes are venomous. And I have a full-time job. And I still, I've just implemented all my biosecurity stuff into my habits.
Yeah.
It's just part of it. I thought in the beginning, oh my God, this is not going to be fun for me, testing everything and doing all this extra shit. No, clearly I'm still doing this. I still love it. It's still fun. And I just go through, I've added into my expenses more rubbing alcohol and fucking buying 1,000 gloves at a time. I wear cotton gloves under my nitrile gloves so that I can change nitrile gloves as quickly as I want to. You
By the
know,
way,
there's just
that's great advice because like the way sometimes the sweat accumulates under gloves and
yes,
it's shitty. Like you
Yes.
run right through them.
Yeah,
and you
double
can
glove is the
sterilize
key.
your gloves.
Yeah, double glove.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And you can sterilize your nitrile gloves too. Using hand sanitizer on gloves is infinitely better than using hand sanitizer on your fucking hands, man. Imagine I sell pesticides for a living and I have 400 snakes. If I just used hand sanitizer and washed my hands every time, I'd do it 150 times a day. Talk about a fucking hassle. Use some gloves. Just they're simple, cheap things. Gloves cost like a couple pennies a piece, dude. Like it's not difficult. It doesn't take the fun out of it. Just implement a couple of new habits, and you just a couple of small things can completely change the outcomes that you have with your collection. It's not a
Yeah,
big deal. Just do it.
I would highly encourage people to think of biosecurity as an extension of the investment into your animals and colony itself.
Yes.
Like we're so comfortable bragging about getting in new genes and throwing the money down for whatever animal and whatever
Yes.
cages and the best on the market or whatever. Like biosecurity should be just as much a priority as the genes in the animal and the what cage you keep it in. So, you know,
Yes.
I think incorporating that into part of the investment of the animal is maybe will land with some people.
Dr.
Yeah.
Tillis,
Yeah.
when is testing accessibility through UF going to be easier for regular folks out there?
I'm not sure. It's probably going to still be a while.
Damn it.
We just don't quite have the capacity to do in mass testing. I'm hoping there's going to be options for that in the future. That's what I'm building for. But it's just not quite there yet. We just couldn't. If there were people knocking on the door, like we just don't have the capacity to deal with it currently. I am also, like I said, trying to develop a whole top-down different type of testing strategy approach that tightens up a lot of the gaps currently, both in our old protocols and in a qPCR type protocol. That is where I think the future is heading with all of this, and it is my priority to try and make that accessible. But it has been, yeah, it has been the equivalent of building the plane as you fly it, very much so. And I'm like almost at the point where the plane is starting to look like a plane.
Okay.
I mean, the reason why I love using your lab is that I know that the money that's going towards your lab is not only going towards a high quality test, but it's also going towards research.
Yes, absolutely.
Specifically related to the health of our animals and the diseases that are spreading to them. So you're funding a lab. I'm so when I can have one of my animals tested, I'm so happy to pay because I know that it's going towards
good cause.
The cause.
Yeah.
And that is a big deal for us right now too, because a lot of federal funding is cut pretty dramatically for a lot of projects that would be like the kind of stuff we do. Reptile pathogens are not getting funded right now. But because our lab is paid for by people submitting samples to us, all of our research comes directly out of that. And it kind of isolates us from the current problems in science as well. And so we really are able to, like, literally today, I discovered I sequenced a new species of cryptosporidium out of a monkey-tailed skink, and like something very different. And so like that's gonna probably be a publication. And it's like I said, it's a slow week we do that. And so when we find new stuff, we can put it out there and publish for people. And then the unknowns, that list becomes smaller. And the more, the more testing we do, the more stuff we find, the more stuff we put out, the better our tests get, the more we find, the better our tests get, the more we find, the better, and so on.
So, and for right now though, you have to go through your veterinarian, and that's how you would get a sample in to
Right
UF.
now, you do need a referencing veterinarian to submit to us. So if you want to submit samples to UF, I suggest partnering with a veterinarian and submitting samples to us that way. And a lot of that is just because our answers can be dense, because we're not just spitting out positive or negative. We are telling you what's in it. And sometimes what's in it matters a whole lot to the conversation. And that's where having a vet to put that in context is an important part of the important part of the process that like right now, like, you know, no offense, Adam, but when you submit samples for us, it takes me a little bit of time to explain all of them. And so like if
Yeah.
we were to scale that out to the public, I wouldn't get any time for testing. I'd be explaining what I'm
Yeah.
finding. And so, you know,
That's just because I have your number, bro.
it's good. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. I love being able to tell you about it because you tell other people. And so when I can have you understand it, I know you are parroting that good information to others as well. And you develop an understanding and can take that and run with it and frame your future conversations with it. And so I
Yeah.
love doing that. But that is also the biggest limiting factor on our lab's ability to really expand. And so that's what I'm trying to systematize a little bit easier to be able to allow us to do. And also because like we really truly are the gold standard of diagnostic testing. We find the stuff that other people don't find. And it's expensive and it takes time, but the results speak for themselves. And so, you know, I don't necessarily view our lab as answering the same questions as some of the other commercial labs. But
Mm.
I also think in the same way that a importer is not going to advertise that, hey, you need to be worried about nidovirus in these green tree pythons that you're spending a lot of money with me for. I don't think that it's, you know, there's not a wide incentive to be straightforward in saying these tests aren't have limitations and cannot pick up everything. And so bear that in mind that when you use our test that it can detect nidovirus, may miss divergent strains. And so that's like the where I try to speak to the current mismatch in expectations that I see between what people think a test is and what a test might actually be, and why there might be differences between different testing strategies, and why, you know, both of those are appropriate tools with appropriate uses, and it's a matter of understanding what the appropriate use is, and that can be tricky.
Mm.
Yeah. All right, boys, I gotta land the plane, do dad's duty. All right. So Patrick, you are the fucking man. Other than bringing up Douche Carpenter, you did perfect tonight. Okay. I appreciate everything. A Boreal Obsession on IG. And then Dr. Tillis, your time, man. I really appreciate it so much. Looking forward to, we're probably just gonna have the same guys on for the round 3 if you're okay, if you're cool with that. So
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. That'd be great.
we'll do this again, and I'll put Dr. Tillis's link to his IG in the description below. But give it up. It's a wrap for Patrick Holmes and Dr. Tillis, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you, boys. Have a good night. Okay, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Take care.
Later.
See ya.
Great show, man. What'd you think?
Oh man, it was great.
Action packed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw Adam Wickens was in the comments.
Was he?
No, I'm fucking with you.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't be worried. I mean, that's my boy. You know what I mean? And you know, Patrick had to say what he had to say, and everyone has an opinion on things. And I don't think Patrick was wrong. I really don't.
Yeah.
You just gotta be careful out there, man. That's kind of why Dr. Tillis's episodes, as you know, are so important, because people need to hear this, dude. And it's just the raw truth of things. And so,
yeah.
yeah. And if you really care about these animals, you'd fucking listen to everything both these guys said tonight. You know?
Yeah. Dude, the amount of times that that people have brought up Nido in conversation on podcasts, and you just sit there and wince and cringe after you've spent some time talking to Dr. Tillis or anybody that understands these viruses, you know, yeah, man, you sit there and you're like, God, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's dumb. That's just misinformation, you know? And yeah, it can be really cringeworthy.
Well, what was very non-cringeworthy was having you part of this show tonight. So I appreciate you so much, Adam. Guys, Expert in the Idiot podcast. I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're a trap talker, you need to go check out my man's podcast, because he's doing big work over there. You bring awesome guests, dude. You don't miss. So keep up the great work, Adam. I appreciate you so much. Looking forward to have you back on for that round 3. But you can find all the links to Adam's YouTube, his IG in description below. Go support him and give it up. It's a boy for my boy Adam.
All right. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. Appreciate you. All right.
All right. Later.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Definitely going to go back and listen to it. Patrick Holmes, definitely one of the best people I know in this hobby. Majority known for chondros, but like he said, it's a lot deeper than chondros with Patrick. And so go follow him on Instagram. And of course, Dr. Tillis, thank you so much again for your time. If this was your first time listening, if you enjoyed this episode, before you leave, hit that like button. We should at least have 50 likes. Okay. There were 60 people tapped in. So there should be at least 50 likes. Don't be one of those. Don't be a lame. Hit that like button. All right. And yeah, if you guys want a round 3, definitely drop a comment in the comment section. Enjoy the rest of your week. All right. But that's all we have on this episode 751 in the books. Find all the links to my sponsors in the description below. Have a good weekend. I'll see you at the top. Cheers. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, brought to you by ZoomEd.
ZoomEd is proud to be supporting the Trap Talk Reptile Network. At ZoomEd, reptiles are our passion. For over 48 years, we've been creating premium foods, supplies, and habitats for reptiles and other exotic animals. We're a company made up of hobbyists that test our products on the hundreds of animals that we care for here every single day. Whether you're an established breeder or a first-time hobbyist picking up your first ball python, ZoomEd has you covered with everything you need to keep your animals happy and healthy.
I'm excited to talk about this new product with ZoomEd called the Slither Sense. It is a remote temperature and humidifying monitoring system, which we all know how important temperature and humidity is to your reptile. And for you to have remote access to your temperature and your humidity in your reptile room could really, really be a game changer for the longevity of you keeping reptiles. So guys, make sure you check out that product. Find the link in the description below. Click on it right now. Give me your feedback in the comments below. Let me know how you're liking a brand new ZoomEd product. Shout out to Focus Cube Habitats, the #1 PVC enclosure in the reptile industry. Hands down, everything you guys see behind me are 3x2x2 PVC design enclosures by Stephen and Ashley over at Focus Cube Habitats. My entire room at this point, all Focus Cube Habitat enclosures, and that is for a real reason. My reptiles love them. I've had majority of these Focus Cube Habitats behind me for over 6 years now. So guys, if you're looking to expand your reptile room and get yourself some new enclosures, no better place to visit than Focus Cube Habitat. You head over to focuscubehabitats.com and see how many different design enclosures you could choose from. And you can also follow them on Instagram and stay updated with all current new enclosures on their YouTube channel. So thank you so much, Stephen and Ashley over at Focus Cube Habitats. And I think I got new enclosures in the driveway, so I gotta go. Shout out to Focus Cube Habitats, you are the best. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that's the one and only MORPH Market and MORPH Market Shipping. One of the biggest exciting things about the reptile hobby over the past couple years is MORPH Market Shipping taking everything to the next level. Anything as far as reptile purchasing or selling needs can all be done on MORPH Market's website. So I highly suggest you go check it out, especially if you're in the market of purchasing your first, second, or third, or fourth reptile. You can find a bunch of legitimate breeders on MORPH Market's platforms. They stand very tall on representing the best breeders we have in the hobby. So don't look anywhere else when it comes to looking for your new reptile. Not to mention, if you're looking for aquatics or your next plant, MORPH Market's a spot for you as well. Make sure you head over to morphmarket.com. And the best thing about MORPH Market's platform, you could ship directly from their website with MORPH Market Shipping. MORPH Market Shipping has saved this hobby billions of dollars as a whole. I myself saved thousands with MORPH Market Shipping last year due to their insanely cheap rates. So definitely go take advantage of these rates on top of the amazing customer service that comes along with MORPH Market Shipping. Shout out to Darian and Zach, and shout out to the entire MORPH Market team. So proud to be a part of this team. Thank you so much for MORPH Market Shipping and MORPH Market, and so excited to announce new MORPH Market features that are going to be hitting the reptile hobby real soon, like live sales on MORPH Market. Thank you so much, MORPH Market and MORPH Market Shipping. Thank you for all the fellow support. Thank you so much for anyone who watches the Trap Talk Reptile Network. Hit that like button. If you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, you'll be notified of every new episode dropping here out of the network 7 days a week. And also by hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, it pushes this network out to other new keepers coming into the hobby. So by you doing that, it does more than you think. So thank you so much again for all the support. And if you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. We're doing big things over here and we really appreciate it.